Good afternoon and good morning to all of our listeners. Welcome to today's webinar on the role of data analytics in today's latest technologies, presented by Ramesh Donta, the Managing Partner at Digital Transformations Pro. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Please ask a question anytime you want. Type it in on your screen, and we will answer all the questions towards the end of the presentation. And as you leave, please read the webinar, leave us a feedback, and share the link with your team or network who are not able to be here today so that they can see it as well. Without further ado, Ramesh.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you all for attending. And please do rate the webinar at the end and leave us a feedback, and then keep asking questions. We will answer the questions towards the end. Right, so very quickly, a little bit about me. I'm the managing partner with the Digital Transformation Pro, extensively dealing with data right after my college, so data processing, data analytics, and various industries. And so here I am. And one of the things people ask me is like how this webinar came about. So I myself, I write a lot, I publish a lot. And one of the things that I've been doing for the last 6 months or so is writing to tdan.com, right? When I looked at when I did some research on Gartner, Forrester, Accenture, Deloitte, and all these companies, so towards the end of the year, they usually come out with, latest trending technologies for next year kind of stuff. So then I did some analysis as to, okay, what are these technologies these people are talking about? So I put a matrix together. And interestingly, almost all of them are converging a similar set of technologies they're saying that will revolutionize, the industry, revolutionize the world. Then I said, okay, but the thing is, once I started digging into it, not many people are aware of these technologies. That's when I said, I will start a series of these trending technologies, and then how data plays a critical role in all these technologies. Data is very close to my heart, something I believe that data actually gives you the true answers. So, and then since then, I wrote about 4 of these articles about data and analytics in artificial intelligence, in blockchain, and a digital twin. That was my most recent one. And so that whole series, Fundu.info, got hold of the series, and they contacted me about doing a webinar. And so now we are here based on the series of articles that I wrote. All right. So now let me go through what we have in store for today. Right. So I will just give a brief overview of the latest technologies. And then the format that we're going to follow for today is that we will review first overview of each of the technologies. And afterwards, how data and analytics play a critical role in each of these technologies. And the order in which I'm going to go is artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, IoT, blockchain, digital twin. So let me start with this trending technologies. See, on the screen, you would see about 6 of them on your left-hand side. One is artificial intelligence and machine learning, digital twin, AR, VR mixed reality, cloud computing, blockchain, and intelligent things. And then how did I come up with these 6? As I said, I looked at all the major research organizations, Gartner's, Forresters of the world. I put a table together. Almost all of them at least have these 6 core technologies in their portfolio of technologies that they have practices in and they believe are revolutionizing and adding significant business value to the industry. For today's webinar, though, I've selected 4 of these more from the interest of time, what we can cover, and secondly, my own passion in terms of, as a managing partner, the areas that our company focuses on. And they are AI, IoT, blockchain, and the digital twin. So just take a look at, I have one key nugget under each one of them on the right-hand side. For example, if you look at why AI and ML is so significant, if you go to monster.com, they produce research. They said the three most in-demand skills, right, for people in the career is ML, machine learning, deep learning, and NLP. So that's how significant it is in terms of interest. If you look at IoT, depending on who you believe, it's anywhere from 20 to 100 billion connected devices they see this year or next year. So I put a number out there, it's about 31 billion. Source is IHS, but if you go to some other source, you will see 100 billion. And the third one is the blockchain, right? This is where that has taken by storm, especially with the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But at least Gartner says the spending from businesses is about $2 billion plus, which I believe they are undercalling it. And there's a 40% year-over-year growth, by 2022, right, until 2022. And if you look at digital twin, I mean, that is I call a new term for some old technology that we already been using for quite some time. But if you just look at the digital twin, there's a close to 40% CAGR from now until 2023. So each one of these technologies have a significant growth and also significant interest, and both in terms of human capital as well as the venture capital. So of these, all these four are intertwined. I cannot say AI ML is a separate market by itself, but AI ML plays significant role in IoT, blockchain, and digital twin. So all of these are intertwined, right? And then some of these are, not truly technologies. Internet of Things, I consider that as a market, as an industry that has a lot of technologies playing in it. But many times people consider that IoT by itself as a technology, right? We'll go into some of those details later on. So with that introduction, so let me just go into a little bit of a context setting with respect to data analytics, right? If you look at any company, right, from all our consulting experience, no company just invests in technology for technology's sake. The company must first think about getting a business value for any investments that they make. That is true for any technologies, right? And then again, that business value has to be measurable so they can justify any investments, right? The business value can be in terms of savings, in terms of revenues, increased opportunities, improving the growth, any of those measurable vectors that they need to believe in, and then actually I have to show for them to invest in any technologies. But how do they actually measure the value? So that is where the analytics plays a critical role, right? So if you look at the analytics, right, so there are about four of these types of analytics that you see a lot of research in. The first one is a descriptive analytics, which tells you what happened. The second one is a diagnostic analytics, which is more about why something happened, right? If it's something broke, why a particular operational failure is there. The next one is a predictive analytics. Okay, based on whatever happened in the past, whatever the context that is there, what is going to happen, right? And the last one is the holy grail of the analytics is a prescriptive. Okay, given that these are the possible options of opportunities or things that might happen, so getting help from analytics to help a business executive to figure out where to invest, where to go. So what should I do? But if you look at from analytics perspective, descriptive and diagnostic are less complex, and then of course the lower business value, they've always been happening, but much more focus is nowadays is on the last two, which is predictive and prescriptive analytics. And the technologies that we looked at, whether it's AI, whether it's blockchain or digital twin, all of these things, the focus is deriving predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, applying those to those technologies to really make significant contribution to the business. That's where the focus that I'm seeing from the business executives. So that is the context of a data analytics to the technologies that we talked about. So now let's go into each one of them individually. Okay, so now that we have the context of both the technologies as well as context of the analytics, let's dig into each one of them. The very first one is artificial intelligence. So this is something very, very close to my heart, and this is where my recent practice has been. And then the AI is defined in many different ways, but I come back to these 5 areas, right? It's all-encompassing from AI perspective. One is the machine learning. The second one is the natural language processing. Third one is the vision and speech. And the last one is a catch-all bucket that I have there. It's expert systems and planning and robotics. And each one of them is a huge space by itself. Just for the sake of discussion today, though, I just combine them into one, right? And if you look at machine learning, people talk about deep learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning. And within NLP, you have content extraction and classification. Again, these areas that I'm talking about, classification and content extraction, it's not just specific to NLP itself, but you could also take them out and then apply to machine, they're all intertwined. Okay? But the key point that I wanted to mention here is that AI, there's a lot of talk, focus about algorithms. Right? Anytime people talk about, this CNN, some other neural network. But in my opinion, and then practice as well, people focus less on the data part of it. But data plays a very, very significant role in deriving the value out of artificial intelligence, both from, the algorithms as well. Right? But that's something that I keep emphasizing, that data plays a very, very critical role in all these technologies, and especially in the AI piece of it. Right? So in my next slide, where I talk about this data analytics, I will focus a little bit more on the data. Okay, so let me just walk you through what's in the slide here. The very first one is the data repository. So the starting point for me, first is identifying what is the business problem that we are trying to solve, right? What is the business strategy, and what are the problems that we're trying to solve, or what are the opportunities I'm after? So once we figure that area out, so the next question I ask is, okay, what are the data sources that I'm going to rely on? What are the data sources that a business has? Right? What are the data sources the business has to go and get and look at to towards solving the problem that they have started off with, right? And then again, where is the data, right? So whether it's historical data, data about the assets the company might have, and then different interactions that are happening, data about the interactions that are happening within the company, and then what are the usage patterns depending on the business, the industry they're in. Right, so identifying all of that is step one. Once you figure that out, the next one is actually, okay, what algorithms, that you look at algorithms, again, with the intent of solving a particular business problem in mind, right? So I won't go about and picking algorithm in a vacuum, right? And then based on the kind of a data I have, also drives the kinds of algorithms that I'm going to look at. Right? If let's say I have a lot of dirty data, which is the data quality is poor, right? So then I might pick some algorithms that will help me working with that kind of a data. I have huge amounts of data, like a streaming data that's coming at that I have to deal with. Then I would look at some big data related stuff, right? So the kinds of a data, the sources of data that you have, the types of data you have, will help you refine your thinking about the algorithms, right? So do not look at algorithms independently by themselves. And then the third one, building block, is the domain-specific model that you're going to go after, right? So some of the models can be repurposed from domain to domain, but some models are very specific to the domain, right? Whether it's a finance or manufacturing or whatever. Let's say if I built a fraud detection model, that's much more insurance space and financial space, not necessarily applicable to some other industries, right? And if I'm looking at a defect anomalies model, right, or some model that I'm building to find out if the machines and systems break down, they may not be applicable to some other domain, right? So these three pieces that I put there, data repository, machine learning algorithms, and domain-specific model, they're all connected with each other, and they're driving each other, right? So each one of them is not being picked in isolation. So that's the fundamental piece that we need to understand. This is where data plus algorithms, play a crucial role. And then when you put them all together, that is where you'll come up with the recommendation engines, intelligent search, predictive analytics, and that is where the intelligence that your intelligent insights, that's what you're extracting out of the model that you put together based on the data that you have seen within the organization and then the specific algorithms that you picked, right? So when I scoped the industry in terms of what kinds of platforms that are available, Azure has Azure ML, and then Google Cloud Prediction API is there, TensorFlow, and the last slide on this presentation has a list of some key resources that you can go to pick specific platforms that might be useful for your work. Okay, but this is one area. It's a lot of excitement is going on, and then I can tell you from my own experience and practice that real tangible business value can be derived from investments into AI. Right, and just today, actually, I read an article. The second winter of AI is coming, right? Maybe coming. So what that means is AI a hype, right? So like we all know that in 70s and 60s, there's a lot of talk about AI, and it's gone to the first winter of AI where the investments have died down at that time. But now it's come back because of advances in algorithms and advances in computing, storage, and all that stuff brought AI, back to life. And then, so there is a discussion about, hey, is this too much of a hype, or is a second winter coming? But from my own experience, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of, realizable benefits that we can get out of the investments in AI. This is one area that I'm really excited about. Okay, so now we're done with AI, and the next area that I would like to touch upon is Internet of Things. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I do not consider IoT as a technology by itself. It's a collection of technologies into a market where a lot of intelligence is being driven into things, right? And then also connectivity, right? So in the IoT market, two specific attributes that define this market, in my opinion, is the intelligence in the devices and the connectivity piece of it, right? One of the examples that I could give you is that just a few weeks ago, we were looking for a clothes washer. We're in the market for it, and I pretty much every model that I looked at has a Wi-Fi in that washer. So I went and asked the salesperson as to why do I need a Wi-Fi in a clothes washer, and then the person said, hey, you don't have to go and check your washer every few minutes if it's done or not. The machine will send you an alert when the washing cycle is completed, right? So that one usage. The other usage, somebody was telling me at the beginning of the webinar, is that if I'm a student, so my mother can kind of wherever she is, she can tell me to go. Actually, she can remotely start the washer, and of course, I have to put the clothes in. So there are a lot of interesting usages that are coming with these connected devices in the IoT market, right? So within this market, if you look at it, on the left-hand side is a consumer-facing IoT. On the right-hand side is the industrial IoT. And the usages, the specific technologies, and each of these are different. And my focus is much more on the right-hand side, on the industrial IoT side. And, the retail, health, and again, smart cities, kind of usages. So again, but some of the statistics in the IoT market are really, really stunning. For example, as I mentioned, 30 to 100 billion connected devices by 2020. And the IDC is predicting that the IoT spending, just watch this number, is $1.3 trillion by 2020, right? In the overall market worldwide, they're predicting, IDC is predicting, there's a 1.3, not even billions, it's $1 trillion, right? And GE is predicting that 10 to 15 billion IoT, 10 to 15 billion dollars of IoT contribution to the world GDP, right? So some of the stats are really, really stunning in this marketplace. So within this IoT, how does data analytics play a role here? Let me build this slide out here. Okay. So what you have here is on the left-hand side is data sources, right? These data sources are like it could be sensors and controllers and tags. They provide the data, right? The devices and instruments and robotics, right? It's a higher level than the sensors that they provide the data. And then some of these operational systems or transactional systems, they deliver the data. So those are all the data sources that you have out there. They're providing, they could be on the edge of the network. Some of them could be within the core of the network. But wherever they are, they're sending the data, right? So that's what you want to look at. And within the block that you see on different blocks that you see on the right-hand side, in the middle, then you have to figure out, is it a streaming data, right? Or is a batch processing can be done on some of the data? Or does it need an interactive processing? Or does it need a real-time processing? Is there a intervention from an interaction involved necessary, right? Or just whenever some events happen, you just only process the events, right? Some of those decisions need to be made in the analytics space of when you're dealing with IoT, right? Batch, interactive, real-time, and event, right? And again, secondly, then the other thing is, what is the volume of data that you're looking at, right? The big data, streaming data. So how do you process this data? And so that is the analytics processing block that you see in the middle, right? Then how you analyze, once you analyze the data, then how are you going to visualize this, right? So many times what I see is that in terms of the intelligence business intelligence that we extract from all this processing, depending on the visualization, it can make or break how you present the story, right? Whether it's dashboards, or whether it's smart reports or other kinds of visualizations, right? So even if you have done really fantastic work on the analytics, but if it's not visualized in a particular manner to help you tell a good story about the output of the analytics, it could make a break. I've seen personal instances of this one really shining through in some of the instances, right? And then applications, as I mentioned, everything is about smart, right? You see smarter cities, intelligent cities, smarter grids or intelligent grid, smarter homes. So it's all about either smart/intelligence in its application. So that is the output of the IoT. Okay, and going back to the comment that I made, if you look at what kinds of platforms that are available, analytics platforms that are available in the marketplace that specifically apply to the IoT market, right? I see Azure Stream, I see AWS Greengrass, I see IBM. Of course, Watson is a very general purpose that can be applied to many different areas, right? So these are some of the platforms out there. And the interest in some of these technologies, whether it's IoT, whether it's AI, it's possible not only because of the storage and the computing that has really vastly expanded, but it's also because of some of these out-of-the-box platforms that are available with specific technologies that help me or help a lot of developers or businesses to go and get business intelligence somewhat quicker, right? So things that I talked about, Azure Streams and Greengrass in the IoT space, lots of platforms that are there. So out of the box, they're configured to work in an IoT space. Okay, so now we covered artificial intelligence. We have covered IoT. Now let's go a little bit into the blockchain. Let me build out the slide here. Yeah, from a blockchain perspective, it's definitely this one of those technologies that has had a rapid advance over the last 1 to 2 years. I'm sure you have seen the meteoric rise of the Bitcoin, especially from its price of $19,000 at the beginning of the year, and of course right now it's down in the dumps. As a result, the investments are also, especially on the cryptocurrency side, have gone down. But the blockchain, the interest in blockchain technology that's behind this is pretty still alive and active, right? So that I see it. But if you look at the overview of blockchain, what it is, right? So there are key components. One is it's a distributed ledger of all transactions in a network, right? So using this blockchain, participants in the network can confirm transactions without the need of a trusted intermediary. So from what I have seen, these 5 building blocks that I put there for blockchain components, so they are the core components, they're the key building blocks that make blockchain what it is. So number 1, it's a peer-to-peer network, right? So they're connected to each other without a central point of authority. That's one piece. Secondly, it's a distributed ledger, right? Every participant in the network, right, has a simultaneous access to view of the information. On this particular piece, the distributed aspect of blockchain technology, it's good for the technology, but as I will talk later, it makes the analytics out of blockchain technology a little bit more complicated. Okay, and then the third, of course, is the cryptography, and this is where it gets a lot of visibility out there. That this particular technology has information about the cryptographic functions and uses cryptographic functions, right? And the fourth one is it's a consensus. The verification of these transactions they're done through consensus with conforming changes with one another, right? So there is again this another piece that stands in the way of getting quick analytics out of the blockchain technology, the consensus piece. And the last one is that within the blockchain technology, you could have additional business logic, right? Especially in terms of like a financial industry where there is a little bit more adoption in that industry, right? So you could have an agreement on expected behavior of financial institutions, right? As a result, so you could kind of have a consortium, and then you could have your own business logic. So these are the 5 building blocks within a blockchain, and the key things are it's a distributed in nature, and it's encrypted, and the third one is it's immutable. So once written, it cannot be changed, right? So the last piece of once written, it cannot be changed is really, really good from a data management perspective. Because what happens is in all these technologies, you will find that the data, the source, the data quality of this data is very, very key. And many times you find the data is spread out throughout the organization without a single source of truth, without what's called a golden record of each of the data. Whereas in a blockchain technology, because the way it is, it's designed as architected, the way it works, that you will find a golden, source of the data. But in all these things I mentioned, data is the one that binds all these components together. Okay, so that is the quick overview of the blockchain technology. Now I will share my thoughts on the analytics piece in the blockchain. it may be at odds with what you think about analytics in the blockchain, but let me go over some of these pieces and give you my rationale of why I believe this way. Number one thing that I'm making here is that blockchain and analytics do not mix naturally. See, if the previous two technologies that we reviewed, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's in the IoT space, there's a lot of analytics work that goes on, and there are out-of-the-box platforms that naturally give you a lot of capabilities in those areas to get the analytics out, right? To work easily with in the AI space or an IoT space. That is not the case with the blockchain, right? The primary purpose of a blockchain is that it's created for a secure and accurate recording of transactions, right? It's not meant to get analytics out of blockchain quickly or whatever. So that's one thing that I've seen, right? And then the second thing that I talked about, the enabling the golden records of data, right? So that is, of course, a positive for analytics platforms, because then the data itself is higher quality that you get, and there is a one place, because all of the within the network, peer-to-peer, everywhere, you could find the same set of data everywhere, right? So I don't have to go hound for the one single record. I can find it anywhere within the organization once I implement the blockchain. So the second bullet is positive from an analytics perspective. The third one is that blockchain, by its design and architecture, gives you data lineage. That means it identifies the data origin, and it also tracks how the data is moving through the system, right? So the positive aspect of this is that, I have a much richer intelligence, right? But the negative side of this is that if I really want to get the analytics out of the source or then I have to traverse the entire chain of events to really find out the origin. So it's not easily available, right? So to drive analytics on blockchain technology with respect to origin, and then where the data originally came from, and then how it transformed, as it traveled through it. So it's a very complicated implementation to get the analytics out of that. So the third one is it's got both a positive and the negative aspect of it from an analytics perspective. And then the last one is that, so as a result, what I found is that there are no ready-made analytics platforms that apply readily to blockchain, to extract business value out of blockchain technology, right? So you use analytics platform, and then you have to put a little bit more investment effort into making them adoptable for blockchain, right? So the key point that I'm making here is that the analytics, it can really deliver rich value, because you have a lot of golden sources of records, and you have a data lineage that tells you the origin of data. So there is a lot of good components about the data that are happening, that are available in the blockchain, but the platform, the analytics platform itself, to extract the value out of it is not ready-made, and it's not readily available in this space. I think there is more evolution that needs to happen in this space to actually derive some analytics. Okay. The last technology that I would review for today is the digital twin. This is personally very interesting to me. When I came across this term over the last couple of years or so, it did not make any sense to me as a term itself. But once I started reading and then researching more about digital twin, what I found out is that the technology has been there forever and ever, right? We all remember the flight simulator. The flight simulator, it's nothing but a digital twin of various aircrafts. Right, we all learned to fly all the aircrafts sitting in our living rooms, but essentially, so we were actually working on a digital twin of these aircraft. And then NASA has been working on this forever and ever. The Mars rover, how do you control, and if something goes wrong on the rover, how do you fix it, right? So sitting in a control room in a NASA is through having a digital twin of all these systems. So essentially, a digital twin is a virtual replica, right? A digital replica of a physical object, but doesn't have to be just a physical object. It could be a replica of a process, or it could be a replica of a system across. And again, you manage it through the entire life cycle of an object or a process or a system. That's what the digital twin is. So why this one is getting a lot of interest now? Because advances in, again, as I mentioned, computing and storage, so it makes it realizable for many organizations, right? You don't have to invest significant amounts of money like a NASA and all, but these are a little bit more readily available for lots of businesses. That's why you're hearing more about these digital twins, and especially in the manufacturing and the energy space, there are pretty decent investments that are going on in that space from a digital twin. So again, giving you a little bit more overview of the digital twin, right? If you look at it enables operational aspects, right? It enables visualizing products in use by real users and in real time. So you don't have to be in the field. You could sit in your office, in your lab, and then see how you could visualize how these objects are getting used real time, right? And then secondly, the organizational, right? One of the things about digital twin, which is very, very interesting, is that the silos within the organization, whether it's a marketing department or finance department or whatever. So the digital twin implementation, by its very nature, brings all those organizations together, departments within organization together. So it breaks down the silos if you're implementing digital twin, and that is something that I've noticed as well, right? So it connects the separate systems and reduces silos in its implementation. From a troubleshooting perspective, it's extremely valuable, digital twin, right? Enables troubleshooting for faraway systems, and especially if you have oil rigs that are further out, unreachable, whatever. So you could troubleshoot if something goes wrong with the system or the process, right? It's extremely valuable. That's why you're seeing investments in that space. And then again, the testing hypothesis. This is where you can look at prescriptive aspects of it. You can test them out without really breaking the physical replica of it, right? So it makes those kinds of analytics feasible, possible, and actually much more interesting, right? And this is one area that I've learned significantly much more recently, but it's a pretty exciting area. Okay. So let's look at the data analytics in a digital twin, right? So what do you need to make happen to get analytics out of this, right? First thing is, on the left-hand side, you need to build asset models, right, of the digital twin. And then, again, you have to classify these assets into, you have classes of assets, and then you basically collect operational data, right? And then you basically create a repository for the operational data. And then you build the analytics engine that munges together these asset models and classes and operational data and to extract analytics, right? So some of the things that you need to to implement that data analytics, you need basically the knowledge management piece of it, and again it goes to the data management aspect of it, which is very critical to almost all of this, right? And then you can drive the predictive analytics. One of the terms that you will hear in the industry is called Industry 4.0, right? So yeah, it's very interesting who comes up with these things, but Industry 4.0 aligns to the IoT and the digital twin aspect of it. I've seen a lot of research that alludes to both IoT and digital twin area, right? And the actual analytics platforms out there, from what I've seen, GE has something called a Predix platform that's much more relevant for digital twin. And then, so that's one thing that I have seen lots of research lots of information is out there on that space. So that is the quick overview of 4 of the technologies and then how analytics plays a crucial role in all of this. So now let me just have some concluding thoughts and we'll get into a QA. So number 1 is that digital transformation, the overarching theme is actually transforming industries, and this is not just theory, and in practice. I've participated, our company participates in these engagements from both from advisory perspective and as well as getting into some of the implementation aspect of it. So it's real in all these areas. And then the second piece, of course, is that data is the centerpiece of all these technologies. It's pretty exciting to talk about a technology, but some of the work is very mundane, identifying the data sources and cleaning up the data, right? Making sure the data quality, assessing it, and then making sure that it's there. And then thirdly, managing the data itself, right? So how do you manage them? So all those aspects become very important. So because the data is the centerpiece of these things, and many times when we think about a technology, we forget that data is the one that actually, is the underpinning of all these technologies. And the third one is, of course, the analytics is the one that drives intelligent insights that will help the business executives, make smart decisions, and then it gives them what are the possible options, both from a prescriptive analytics perspective, right? Then lastly, the holy grail in terms of the diagnostic and descriptive analytics are no longer, they're stable, right? So people don't even care too much about it. But in terms of the question they ask is, okay, how much prediction that these investments are making, what kind of prescriptions they provide to help the executives. So that's where most of the discussions and investments are happening, right? So that's the net of it. On this particular slide, I talked about, so on the right-hand side, so what you have is some of the resources that you could go to look at some of the analytics platforms, the ones that I mentioned, the key popular platforms in the AI space, in the IoT space, in the digital twin space. So that's what that right-hand box will give you. And on the left-hand side, I gave you some of my writings, the things that I've been writing about on the data strategy side and data quality side. Right, you could go and look at, and again, data how into specific industry like AI and IoT. It's a list of my articles that you could go to get something more. And one of the articles that I wrote is 75 important big data terms. Right, so you can that's become pretty popular, and artificial intelligence is all about data. That's one of the sources for my webinar here, so you can look at all of them. So with that, now I will open up for questions and any thoughts that you might have as well.
Thank you, Ramesh, for a very interesting overview of the whole thing. And some of the terms are becoming in vogue again. One question we have from an audience member is, how does a business start in identifying a technology to implement or invest in?
Okay, that's a really, really good question. And I can give you from my own experience 3 different engagements that we participated in. The very first one is a pharmaceutical industry, and interestingly, one of the divisions of a large pharmaceutical company plays in logistics space, and so they were operating with a system that is, built multiple years ago, right? So as a result, and it's a global, worldwide. So the problem that they started with is, okay, how do I manage my data? Right, my data is all over the space. Even before I could make a decision, I need to know, number one, am I relying on a quality data or not, right? And where is my data located? So for them, the investment in the foundational aspects of data itself is very, very important to solve the problems that they're trying to solve, as opposed to, okay, now I want to go into AI, I want to go into something else. right? So I think the very first question, the thing that you want to address, you want to ask yourself is, okay, do I have a strategy for data strategy, right? Do I have a master records of my data? Is my data clean? How do I know if it's clean or not? So those are the questions that I think you want to ask, and what are the business problems that I want to solve? That's a pharmaceutical one. And the second one is the retail engagement. Retail engagement, somewhat similar, which is that they wanted to have a really good product catalog, but the information that they have is not necessarily in one place, or it's a good quality, right? Again, it started from trying to solve a business problem, and then quickly getting into the data space, like what data do I have and how do I analyze it. Mm-hmm. I think that's the fundamental start.
Right, thank you. We got another question from the audience. Besides finance, what are some examples of markets or industries that will be impacted in either good or bad ways by blockchain?
This is very interesting, actually. One of the recent things that I've seen is it's not finance, it's actually manufacturing, right? So it's in many areas. What happens, especially in the high-tech area, right? So what's happening is, let's say, advances in technology. A particular company cannot do it by themselves, right? So they usually have a consortium of different companies, but at the same time, they don't want to share their own company secrets, right? So what they are doing in this space is actually adopting blockchain technology so they can work collaboratively, but at the same time not share the secrets that they have themselves, right? So almost like the intermediary that they got away with. So but they're using blockchain technology to able to collectively solve whether it's a defect anomalies and those kinds of things, which they could not do it by themselves, but working with other players in the industry. So that's what they're looking at. Right, so it's a very creative way of using blockchain. It doesn't seem like out of the box, but that actually real investment is going on in this space right now.
Thank you. One of the other questions which is on the mind of a lot of people, ranging from students to mid-career professionals. Which of these technologies, from your experience, should I focus for my career? In terms of studying up new things, or in terms of branching into newer avenues?
Yeah, actually, that's a really tough question for me to answer, but I've been asked that many, many times, right? Because people say, hey, should I go and learn this particular algorithm in the ML space? Should I go focus on CNN or some neural network kind of algorithm, or what that is, right? So I think our natural inclination is to actually go and learn a technology, which I will not say don't do it, but I think the interesting thing that I would really start off with, okay, what are the problems that people are trying to solve, like a defect anomalies, right? It's a big problem. Fraud detection is a big issue, right? So what specific skills will help me, solve that? And actually, one of the things that people really, don't focus on, because data is underpinning on all of these things like a data quality. How do you clean the data, right? How do you, help manage the data, right? What things that I can, like there's a lot of data quality engagements that go on, data management engagements go on. So data analytics is on top of it. But I think my advice to people is that, look at what is necessary to clean up the data, make data is better quality, right? So focus on them, and I think you will end up with a lot of opportunities from a career perspective, and that has been the case for our company as well.
I can personally relate to that. Quite a few things we do in our industry, and we have to make sure that the data is a high fidelity data. And if you are not comfortable about the veracity of it, you can't use it, even if it helps or hurts your business case.
Correct.
So, yeah. We got some feedback from the audience, prescribing and saying thank you for the presentation that you made clear and simple. Thank you very much for attending. We are always striving to bring you new content and new ideas. We still have a few more minutes, so if the audience would like to answer anything else, please feel free to do so. And all this interaction will be recorded, are being recorded as we speak, and will be available for online consumption I think a short while after the live webinar is ended. Any other questions?
So I'll be here as well. So if any more questions are there, and then a few more minutes, then afterwards, And then, by the way, so feel free to ping me. So my contact information is there at the beginning.
Absolutely.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. So feel free to contact me, and then I'm open to new connections, new engagements. Right. So looks like we can end it, Shala. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think with that we come to the end. Thank you on behalf of Fundu.info and Ramesh Donta for attending this webinar. And the recording would be shortly available on BrightTALK.com Fundu Info channel. Please share it and enjoy it at your leisure at a later time. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.